Good morning and welcome to People's Church. Come on in. I'm Gordon Bolar, a member of the Sunday Services Committee, the coordinator this morning, and also the presenter. Welcome to People's Church. We are a member of the Unitarian Universalist Association, a long tradition of liberal religion, which has a faith that, although the path forward may be uncertain, we can work together along with other church members and build a broader community here at People's Church. So thank you for coming. There'll be a way for you to participate in the service this morning, either here presently or through Zoom. We'll welcome everyone who's on Zoom as well. Thank you for coming this morning.
Good morning. I realize you do not have the lyrics for this song. My apologies for that, but if you will rise in body and spirit, maybe you'll pick up a little bit along the way. We are gathered in the spirit, though our bodies are apart, filled with joy and touched with wonder, separate hands but mingled hearts, giving thanks and singing praises for the love that calls us down from our many different places. We are gathered into one. We are gathered in our sorrow. We are gathered Thanks for humming. We are gathered in commitment to a planet that is whole. Works of justice, acts of kindness, bless the world and heal our souls. As our voices join together, may our song of peace resound, for we offer in abundance all the grace that we have found.
Thank you, Savannah, and thank you, Jennifer. And so as we light our chalice this morning, which we do every Sunday, we have the words from Maureen Killoran. For every time we make a mistake, for every time we make a mistake and we decide to start again, we light this chalice. For every time we are lonely and we let someone be our friend, we light this chalice. For every time we are disappointed and we choose to hope, we light this chalice. This is the time in the service when we share our joys and concerns. Each Sunday, we take a moment to share with one another joys, concerns, sorrows, milestones in our life. So if you're here in person, I invite you to come forward, use the handheld mic, and place a stone in the bowl, in the water there, and speak briefly, and please identify yourself. For those who are on Zoom, who would like to share, please type your message in the chat box, and we will read your message aloud. You could just type the word stone or say the word stone if you don't want to share totally. And what we'll do here is pause the recording so you'll have some measure of privacy in sharing aloud what you share. So please come forward and hear the stones. Your help when it seeps through the cracks of her fingers. Place your hands like this around hers. Together, it can be done. When it hatches, when the nest is no more, watch the wind pick up hope and lay it softly into the welcome of upraised palms. And this poem, entitled Separation, by W.S. Merwin. Your absence has gone through me like thread through a needle. Everything I do is stitched with its color.
Please rise in body or spirit. Our next song is I've Got Peace Like a River. You don't need your hymnals for it. I can just call it out if you want. Oh, you're fine. First is I've Got Peace Like a River. That's our first verse. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. Joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain. I've got joy like a fountain in my soul. Pain like an arrow. I've got pain like an arrow. two more. Tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. Last verse, strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain. I've got strength like a mountain in my soul.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm inviting my wife to read the play, which is today's reflection with me, Ellie Bolar. She's been kind enough. Before we begin, a moment of introduction. Some of you may be wondering why theater here at People's Church. It's a 10-minute play. Well, theater's always about human values. It's human scale. I feel like that's a lot of what we do here at People's Church. Human values inform human choices and decisions in the theater and in the world around us. And human choices and decisions have human scale consequences, sometimes planetary scale consequences. So that's why the reading this morning of Days of Separation. A couple of quotes. One from Vanessa Redgrave. Of course, we all come to the theater with baggage, the baggage of our daily lives, the baggage of our problems, the baggage of our tragedies, the baggage of being tired. It doesn't matter what age you are, but if our hearts get opened and released, well, that is what theater can do. And sometimes everyone is thankful when that happens. The second quote from Oscar Wilde, which I really like. I regard the theater as the greatest of all art forms, the most immediate way in which a human being can share with one another the sense of what it is to be a human being. I wrote Days of Separation at the outset of the pandemic. I wrote it in April and May of 2020, over almost 2.5 years ago. I set the play in April of 2023, not knowing when or if the pandemic would pass, not knowing when or if there would be a vaccine for the pandemic. I still don't know whether I was right in saying it's over in 2023. Maybe some of you have an opinion. But nevertheless, that's the date I picked. I wrote about the future because I had seen a few years ago a public television special on the great flu, the Spanish flu of 1918 through 1920. And accounts in the US indicate that after it was over, people didn't want to talk about it. They moved on. Very few mourned it, very few grieved it. Orphans were left without parents. Communities were devastated, but we kind of marched on happily, very quickly into the roaring 20s with economic prosperity and on the heels of coming out victorious in World War I. A lot was left unresolved back then. Some were embarrassed by what was left undone, what they didn't do. So what are we going to have when we come out of the pandemic, if we're already out, or when we come out? I don't know. That's some of what this play is about. One cautionary note before we read it. The play has moments of humor. Feel free to laugh. But there is also profound loss referenced in the play. And this is a reading. Ellie and I will read some of the stage directions. We have a minimum of props. You'll see those later on. No set. So now I'll introduce the play. It takes place on April 21, the year 2023, at 5:10 p.m. on the bare stage of a community theater near Seattle, Washington, just before a performance of Annie. I'll read Harold from here and narrate stage directions forward. Ellie will read Julia to me and some stage directions forward. So, Harold enters and stands on a bare stage. He holds a box of flowers and a small gift-wrapped box. He looks around and calls off loudly, "Julia, are you in your dressing room? I know what it's like just before the show goes on."
You know nothing about the theater, Harold. You're a critic. So what does bring King County's most feared reviewer here this evening to show his face?
I had hopes we could talk.
I do commend your bravery for standing up here and not hiding out in the audience.
Well, I never had the ambition to be on the stage myself, even before an empty
It's
house.
human feelings you don't have, Harold, in the theater or the marriage. You can probably find ample evidence of that in your diary. So, do you still keep that exacting track of your days, Harold?
Since I strive for honesty and accuracy, I do keep track in my diary and in my head.
So, how long has it been? Our separation. Not that I care.
Well, you cared enough to ask, but let's see, it's been 731 days. Regardless, this entire period is helping me realize, critically speaking, that my fort is standing apart from the action and judging it from afar.
Your fort? So are those gifts you're holding there inside the walls of good old unassailable Fort Harold? Just hand them over now and I'll be off.
There are some things I need to explain about
A card in the envelope that says Julia and roses? Thank you. But our child is allergic to flowers. And here is a gift for Sydney. Very thoughtful, Harold.
from that special bakery we used to visit back in the old days. As for the flowers,
Only your
those...
thoughtfulness could extend to your recent review of Annie. Since it was posted in the green room, our cast is taking turns throwing darts at it. Oh, I got a bullseye on your picture. And now you feel guilty and come here bearing gifts?
Julia, I'm afraid you're wrong. I need to tell you something about that box.
Your reviews can close shows, drive actors from the stage, but this level of heartlessness surprises even me. And pity Julia Howard as Miss Hannigan. She's at least believable as the hateful orphanage martinet, annoyed with her brats. Why don't you say I'm typecast as a bitch?
Merely an honest assessment of your comfort level around children, on stage or off.
And how about Sydney? I'm totally comfortable with him.
You say he's our child, but Sydney is a dog. That's why I brought him dog biscuits.
All right then, Sydney's a dog, but at least you gave him a glowing review.
I gave him a positive review. In a glowing review, I would note that Sydney does not hump the dog catcher's leg, nor does he defecate on stage.
Neither do I. Where's my positive review, Harold? And why not recuse yourself from reviewing your own wife?
When I agreed to the review assignment, I didn't know you'd be cast. And I didn't think we'd still be married.
Then why not tell me that before now, you who strive for honesty?
I'm here to tell you tonight.
Okay, Harold, go ahead and tell me, why did you come here?
Open the note in your hand, Julia. Read it.
This is from your diary. So we're going to do this now? Then you read it to me.
All right, it's time you knew. Dear Julia, these selected diary entries are for my mutual confinement in our former home long before the vaccine was available. Those included here are you, me, our dog Sydney, and our beautiful daughter Claire. March 23rd, 2020, orders from Governor Inslee confined us to our homes. That evening, my wife Julia reported a mild fever, March 27. Julia had a fever of 103 and difficulty breathing. I drove Julia to the hospital. Staff said we couldn't contact her during her confinement.
I know all this. Why do you insist on...
No, you don't know all of it. March 27 continued. When I returned home from the hospital, Sidney was agitated. I calmed him with one of his special dog biscuits. Claire was crying. I gave her a dog biscuit. I ate one too. Calmed us down. April 4, Claire awoke with a headache, chills, and fever of 102. I contacted hospitals. They were not admitting new patients, not even 10-year-old girls. I called the home of a family friend for advice. Dr. John Barnes, MD, retired. His wife told me that Dr. Barnes had died in their home the day before. I told Claire that she was to remain in a room that I had prepared in the basement. Because I needed to stay well, to take care of her, I told her that we must minimize contact between us. I began wearing a mask. I remained symptom-free. April 7, Claire's symptoms were worse. I set out food, water, and pain medication to the top stair. For my continued well-being, I kept the door, the top of the stairs closed, but not locked. Sidney slept outside the door. April 9, Sidney insisted that I come to the basement door. We heard Claire shivering on the other side. She said she couldn't taste anything. She asked for a dog biscuit. I gave her one through the cracked door. I gave Sidney a biscuit. I ate one too. We heard Claire eat her biscuit and crawl back down. I remained symptom-free. April 10, that morning, Sidney pawed frantically at the basement door. I heard no movement or reply to my calls. I went down the basement stairs. Claire was in a bed. After hours on the phone, I reached a funeral home to make arrangements for her.
You told me you held Claire in your arms as she... You said that.
That's what you say to someone who barely survived a 29-day stay in the hospital. In my diary, I note that if one steps back far enough, one can achieve separation. It's theoretically. Then, of course, it all won't seem so unforgivable. That's why I didn't think we'd still be married.
Julia crosses and throws the boxes of roses and dog biscuits hard against Harold's chest. She exits.
After a moment, Harold drops to his knees, slowly, puts the flowers back in the box, and he sets the box of flowers aside to his left. And Harold picks up the dog biscuits and puts them back in their box. He stops to eat one. He chews, nods his head. Not so bad.
Julia slowly re-enters. She stands about 6 feet to the left of Harold. After a moment, she kneels. She looks at the box of flowers on the floor. Why bring me flowers? And why today, Harold?
The flowers are for Claire. Tomorrow is the 3rd anniversary of her interment. I hope you might finally be ready to visit the cemetery in the morning together.
How many days, Harold? How much distance? until it all becomes theoretical.
Body of Christ.
What? Oh, that. I still can't taste anything. I miss the old days, Harold. Give me another. This one's broken.
Broken. Mine too. Is it broken for us, Julia?
Julia reaches for the box of flowers between them. She picks the box up and carefully cradles it to her body. She holds the biscuit in her right hand. Pick me up at 9 a.m. tomorrow. We'll visit Claire together.
Harold nods. They look straight ahead. They bite their biscuits. They chew slowly, silently. The lights fade. Blackout. End of play. Thank you. Well, thank you for listening, and thank you for Ellie for helping me read Days of Separation. We have questions for sharing and listening. If the play prompts any discussion from you, and we'll visit those in a minute who might have commentary or sharing on Zoom. For some guidelines for discussion, please speak the truth as you understand it. To avoid inhibiting the flow of discussion, do not comment on others' comments till everyone has had a chance to do initial sharing. So here are the questions. You can consider all or one of these. What are the ways that you have been separated during the pandemic? Or what have you been separated from? What are the ways you have coped with separations or separation resulting from the pandemic in your life, the life of your family, neighbors, or friends? And finally, in light of the pandemic, what do you see as left unresolved in your life, the lives of others, or our country? I invite you to come forward, share your commentary into the microphone, and be interested what people have to say. And or we can, have some from the Zoom as well. Or I can bring the mic to you. We can't always get you on camera. I don't know if people are more comfortable in speaking from their seat, but if that is the case, I will provide you with a handheld mic. Anything. What's this pandemic meant in your life? I mean, I wrote a play in which we're separated from, man and wife, husband and wife, and then the family, from the community, from other people who are in our homes. And at the end of it, we're on our knees eating dog biscuits in some sort of comforting ritual. Separated from, some people might say, from our God. For a time, from our church. Any thoughts? Thank you, Julie.
Can you hear? Okay. I just think it's been really hard just the trust that we have lost. It's just like I lost trust in everybody, kind of. I just felt like I couldn't go out there and really believe that everything was ever going to be the same again. And it isn't. I still feel it, and I still go to sleep like every night thinking about, I haven't seen my grandchildren yet because they live across the country, and just when you thought maybe you could go, it was terrible where they were, or they had COVID, or, it was just one thing that we thought, how could it be this long? But it's this long. And God willing, in 2 weeks, we will be out in Los Angeles, and we will not be separated any longer. But that's just one of my 3 grandchildren, Ella, but the other boys are in New York, where things aren't so New York City right now, so we just can't seem to get everybody together, and that's hard. But I just kept thinking, every night I would think, if I get the slightest, even a cold, I can't just get a cold anymore, like, oh, it's just a cold. Everything I ever feel from now till forever seems like, oh, is it something? Because, we haven't had COVID yet because we've been really careful, but we don't have any, we just don't feel like it's safe to go inside. We don't go to people inside their homes, except for my sister and her husband. That's about it. But we were just so careful for so long, and we still are, I think, more careful than a lot of people, but I just lost trust in people, I guess. That's just hard. And I also feel like you can't be known the same way because you can't do things in that same way. I was thinking about our choir and how much I enjoyed singing and doing all these things together, and we just can't do it the same way, and it just feels so different to me. So I'm grateful that we can do this and get together, but still I feel like I've been separated from a big part of the way I express myself. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Julie. Others here, and then we can look, see what we have Zoom-wise. Yeah, a lot of fabrication of trust. I hear that. Do we have anything on Zoom that is coming in? I can't always quite read that, but I'm certainly open to more comments here. Yeah, here we go. Dave.
Hi. The governor's stay-at-home order came through on the 3rd day of my final clinical rotation. I was going to school to become a PTA, physical therapist assistant, and I'd completed 2 of my 3 clinical rotations. I'd just begun my 3rd in a nursing home, and then the order came out that everyone had to stay home. Medical facilities were not admitting non-essential personnel, no visitors, no nothing, no one in, no one out except essential staff. And me and about a third of my classmates were kind of freaking out about that because about a third of us had not done our clinical rotations in an inpatient facility like that. And we were kind of worried about whether we would ever be allowed to. The state only requires 2, but our school insisted on 3, and then it was not suddenly clear whether me and a third of my classmates would graduate or not, and whether the last 2 years had been a waste of time or not. So there was a lot of anxiety and nervousness going around in the group chat and online, and just in general, we were all pretty nervous. My wife and me were fairly concerned because while I'd been going to school for the last 2 years, I hadn't really been earning an income. I'd been a full-time student. So, money was running low. We'd kind of been depending on me getting into the job market promptly. And then all of a sudden that was all cast into doubt. And ultimately, we were able to work something out where students like me who had not done an inpatient rotation would just do a second outpatient rotation for 6 weeks. I wound up being assigned back to the same clinician that I'd been working with for my first rotation, along with 2 other students. Normally, they take 1, maybe 2 at a time. Julie was taking 3 at a time. So they were just really struggling to get us out as quickly as possible. The plan had been for us to stay for a full 8 weeks of rotation, but in light of how many students there were who still needed to get through, they just said, as soon as you hit meets expectations, tag out, let the next student come through. And ultimately, I wound up taking the licensure exam before I'd finished my last clinical rotation. So even though I'd passed the exam, I couldn't actually get a license until I'd finished that final requirement. So I wound up doing that second and then having to take the later licensure or get licensed later in the year. So I wound up actually being fully graduated and licensed in October instead of July. And of course, at that point, no one was hiring. Everyone was desperate for staff, but nobody wanted to let anyone who, hadn't already been there in because they might bring COVID with them. So it was a highly stressful time in our lives, and it threw a big hurdle into our way. But eventually I did find a job here in Kalamazoo. We moved out here in March of 2021, and we've been here ever since. And somehow, despite it all, life continues.
We have a caller from Kalamazoo.
I can't really see or read.
We have a caller from Kalamazoo.
Do we? Okay.
Yeah, sorry. I was listening to Julie and thinking about this too, about the choir and the bells. And part of, the issue is the masking for me, because in the last year and a half, I had to get hearing aids. And with the masks, and I partly sight read, which I didn't even know. And so people who have masks on, I have very difficulty hearing what they're saying. Plus, these hearing aids somehow don't always catch consonants. So I have to ask, repeat, and it's just very frustrating. That's one of the problem I had with bells. I felt so like I was interrupting all the time because I can't hear you. And I decided not to do that until I could see people's faces so I could figure out what was going on. So it's just a combination of different kinds of separation. That's one of what the problem with hard of hearing, that, and like on the phone, somebody would call, and if I don't have my hearing aids and I have no idea who they are, what they want, or who they are, I have to ask them to repeat. So that's a new one for me. And I miss all of the things, the choir, the bells, coming to church. I even miss, sometimes speaking in front of people. But this is just what is, I guess. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Others? Anyone else? Yes, good. Gonna come to you. We may not be on camera, but that's okay. Let's hear what you have. There you go.
So, I'm making the connection. Actually, we were very lucky during the pandemic, and I was so grateful that Rachel encouraged me to get onto Zoom. So most of the groups that I had related here to the church, I was able to skip to that and expanded that to 2 film groups, which, have been just marvelous. We are just so, I think it has a lot to do with the sense of vulnerability that I got from this whole episode, that started thinking about leaving our home, which we built, Bob and I, as a hands-on home back in 2004. We're on 10 acres of woods on the west edge of Bloomingdale Township, about 30 miles from here. And I designed the house, with supervision from an architect. We put in all the plumbing, we put in all the electricity. Bob labored mightily over this amazing ceramic floor that covers our whole large central area. And I decided that, I came first to the decision. I'm 74, he's 78, so it's a practical decision to move back into Kalamazoo. But boy, are we having a hard time with it. And, hassles in our relationship, trying to figure out, when we can bear to leave. And so that's related to that, and that caught me more than it caught Bob. But I'm hoping we can look at this as a new adventure, but to leave those woods, it's just the most beautiful mixed woods of every kind, cherry and oak and beech and birch and river birch. And so I hope we get through this okay. I really appreciated the play. I'm still a little thrown by the dog biscuits, a little quirky element there.
Thank you. Others? Anyone else? Or anyone else on Zoom? All right. Hearing nothing, we'll move on then. Thank you for your comments and sharing and listening today in all of this. So now we will move on to our closing with our closing song and then some closing words.
If you would please rise and body your spirit to sing this song together. If you're in person, you have the lyrics in hand. If you're online, I apologize. You do not have them. Google does them. Though days be dark with storms and burdens weigh my heart, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. When sorrow heals my soul and burdens make me strong, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. My sister in my heart, my brother in my song, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. Verse 4 is on the next page. And though the journey is long, the destination is near, though troubles wait at every turn, I know I can go on. Bring it home, last verse. So brothers, take my hand, and sisters, sing my song. When hope awaits at every turn, I know we will go on.
Thank you, Savannah and Jennifer. Also thanks to Ellie and Reed and Andrea and Laura for helping us put on this service this morning. Our closing words, The Pathway to Healing by Roddy Biggs. Friends, thank you for your witness to all that exists on the margins. Thank you for your commitment to hold yourselves and one another in great and steadfast love. Moving forward from this space, may we continue to nurture spiritual growth. May we continue to travel along the winding path to healing from whatever brokenness we individually and collectively hold, knowing that we do not journey this path alone. Thank you.